Welcome to our next episode of Conversations with Yogis podcast. My name's Ashley, and I'm sitting here with Melinda, and today we're going to be talking about meditation. And we're going to talk specifically about our approaches to meditation, how often we practice personally, how we began to learn meditation, and the techniques that work for us, and how to practice yoga without asana today, or asana, if I can say it correctly.
I'm sure it's all good.
Uh, so hello, Melinda. Good to see you today.
Yeah, it's good to see you. It's weird to do this on Zoom, but I think life and especially summer, it's always harder to meet in person. So I'm glad at least we can make this happen.
Yeah. Well, I guess our podcast listeners will not know that we're on Zoom anyway, except we have declared that.
Yeah.
But if you're
Well, we
watching on
are.
YouTube, you'll see.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, I'm excited about this topic because I think there's so much more to meditation than just sitting and waiting for the bliss to happen, the enlightenment, because it's hard work.
Yeah, I think it's important. Me too. I think it's important to talk about because the concept of meditation can seem so foreign and alien and impossible. And I totally empathize because when I first started yoga and was introduced to the concept of meditation, well, even breathing, I'm just like, this is not for me. My mind will never shut off, and I don't think I'll ever be able to meditate. And when I talk about this to my friends too, they're like, oh yeah, no, my mind will never stop running, so I can't meditate. And sitting there for an hour with a blank mind is something that's impossible. And we're here to discuss that anyone can learn how to meditate. If I learned how to meditate with my crazy mental chatter that I had previously before yoga, then I believe anyone can. And just like anything else, you have to learn how to do it and you have to practice it to
Mm.
make it a skill and be able to do it regularly.
No, that's true because I think it just sounds scary for everyone, and it's such a big thing. Like I can't do that. I can't meditate. So many people say that. It's the same as I can't do yoga. I'm not flexible enough. It's like, well, you're missing the point. So I think it's good that people can have different approaches to meditation as well. That you can meditate. You don't have to sit still, and you don't have to be completely empty-minded. Not empty-minded, but not thinking. So I think that's the first thing we should talk about is meditation is not you sitting and not thinking, nothing happening in your mind. It's actually being aware of the thoughts coming in, acknowledging them, recognizing them, and then letting them go and trying to come back to that focus point. Some people focus on one steady point in what they would see under their closed eyes, or some people focus on their breath, some people focus on the sensations on their skin. So there's so many different approaches you can come back to being present. So the main thing is about trying to slow down the mind chatter, because we all have thoughts. We have like 6,000 thoughts in a day, probably more. And we're just trying to slow down how often they come up, and just being aware of them and how soon you can let go of them. So it's not about reaching that silence within your mind. I mean, I'm sure some people can, but I'm definitely very far away from that. And if you're living in the city, it's not easy, because there's so many things happening around you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not about creating that quiet mind like you said. I think it's about becoming more aware, like expanding your consciousness, expanding your awareness of the way that your mind operates and realizing that you are not your thoughts.
Mm.
Your thoughts are not your personality. They're not who you are. They're they're created by your mind, and then you're something deeper than that that can choose whether to engage in those thoughts or leave them for later. And that's what meditation has taught me is that I'm not, I don't have to succumb to my thoughts the moment they enter my brain and kind of have them in the background being distracting and not really addressing them. And then they get a little bit louder because you're not addressing them. And they kind of niggle at you and get really irritating. Meditation is letting you or teaching you how to sit and observe that that's happening and then address those niggling thoughts that are always kind of there, the things that are going on in your life that tend to preoccupy your mental awareness, and just saying, okay, well, what actually is this thought that's coming into my brain right now? Why is it there? Why is it pestering me so much? Do I need to be thinking about this right now? Or can I process it sitting here and seated, fully realize it, and then let a piece of it go so it's not so loud in my day-to-day life?
Yes, it's kind of like rewiring your thoughts, because what I find that we repeating the same thought pattern, or the same pattern of like not self-harm, but like when you think about bad thoughts about yourself, or repeating a bad thing you have done, or we just repeating the same things, same patterns, and then we're trying to break those patterns. And as you said as well, is we have thoughts in our mind, and are we reacting to it? Are we taking action to those thoughts, or are we just observing them? Because I think that's why meditation goes further away from actually just sitting and meditating. It's what you do 24/7, because throughout your day you will have thoughts, and then how you react to them and how conscious are you of them is very important. For me, that's my main meditation, is being more conscious of how I live day to day and moment to moment, because it's so easy just to get on with things, and then here and there your thoughts coming all over the place, and trying to be more conscious of them.
Yeah. I think they tie into each other. Like you learn meditation and it makes you more aware of your actions that you do through your day and your thoughts that you have through your day, and you'll catch yourself like, why am I thinking that right now? Or especially when you have thoughts that are not kind to yourself or unkind to others, you catch yourself and like, why did I just think that right now? Do I actually feel that? Is that who I am? Is that my identity? It's like, no, okay, well then I can work through it. I can release it. And then you can work on it a little bit deeper in meditation and feel it viscerally, like in your body, and start to release it from your body. Because yoga teaches us that our body and mind are a continuum of each other, right? When our mind isn't just in our brain, it's in our whole being, like every cell in our body. We have this connection to our own self in relationship to the environment. And meditation, you learn through your body by, well, this is how I learned it anyway, by sitting still and feeling your body become relaxed, or feeling the discomfort and the wiggles in the body, which is where most people start. And then recognizing that in the mind, your experience there, if you're
Mm.
comfortable, if you're uncomfortable, and then turning towards the breath, which is that connection between, to find comfort in the body when it's uncomfortable, that extends into more comfort in the mind.
I think that's why everything's so interconnected, like how we talked about the 8 limbs, how we went from more physical, more things that you can't actually touch, like concentration and senses. And I think with the meditation it's the same, that you have to start from the physical, that first you will be like, oh, I can't feel my leg, oh, my back is hurting. And then after you can move past those discomforts of your physical body, or learn how to sit that you don't have those discomforts, then you can move deeper, and then actually like, okay, then the thoughts coming in. And then later on, you can take that meditation off from your mat and actually use it in your day-to-day life. Because if people think that, oh, I'm going to start meditating, like just walking around and thinking about or being conscious, I think you do need to do that work as well, to actually sit and be aware, because otherwise you can't. Because we can multitask, it's possible, but the work is never going to be the same if you're just like kind of conscious but not really conscious. You just acknowledge it, but you're not doing anything about it. So it's important to know that some of us, like I do take my meditation off my mat quite often, but it took quite a few years to do that before I could actually take it off my mat, and I can do it kind of day-to-day life. But I still have to go back and sit, or just be present and do some kind of meditation, not just like doing reflections 24/7, because you do have to work on the new things that comes into your life, and you have to solve those.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking about how I learned meditation. I I've talked about this on our podcast before. In my first place that I really was dedicated to yoga in Edmonton, Alberta, the Sattva School of Yoga, they they practice breathing and meditation at the end of every class. So I really didn't have a choice but to be introduced to it. And I think classes are a lot shorter these days, or many of them are. So often that's skipped. Like I don't teach that much meditation in my classes 'cause I just don't have time. A lot of them are 45 minutes, an hour. But those were 75-minute classes, and we had about 15 minutes of breathing and meditation followed after Shavasana. So your body was primed to be relaxed and still. And then you'd sit in meditation. And it's a learning pattern that, again, it starts from your body. So if you're not used to sitting, that's where you have to start, is finding a comfortable seat in your body. And once your body starts to become more comfortable in that seat, and it does take, for me anyway, it took years. Like I was so uncomfortable sitting. My lower back would hurt, my neck, my shoulders, like I'd be kind of hunched over, and everything was painful. My limbs would go pins and needles, and that discomfort in the body was so overwhelming that it made meditation seem so impossible for me at the beginning. But then, you learn to turn to the breath and try to breathe for a few moments and find comfort. And when you actually feel that and discover that it's a real thing, that you can breathe and find comfort in your body that extends to your mind, then that's where you need to turn your attention to, like, how much can I pay attention to my breath that I'm not thinking about the discomfort in my body. And
Yeah.
then that extends into moments of finding the true connection between body, breath, and mind, where meditation occurs. And you can become the observer of you and realize you're not the pain in your body, you're not that distraction. You start to see the full truth in the present moment.
Mm.
And you realize you're not that, but you can think about it or visualize it and feel it, I guess, where you can choose to stay in meditation, choose to be,
To
how do I
come
say
over
it? Pardon?
to come over that fixation of
Yeah.
pain or
You're
discomfort.
you're like aware of it. You're aware of it, but it's not taking over your mind and your emotions. Like previously, you'd sit down and be like, "Oh, I'm in so much pain. Like my back hurts. Like I can't meditate. This is so distracting." And then after a while, you sit and you're like, "Oh yeah, I do." And it's more relaxed. You become aware of, "Oh, my knee hurts or my hip hurts." But that's just a moment, and then you're back into meditation, and you are not your knee pain or your back pain. You are aware that that's there, but it's not in it's not who you are. It's not your present moment. It's not taking all of your concentration and focal point. And meditation is ultimately developing that one pointed concentration where you're simultaneously like aware of everything around you, but your attention isn't there. Your attention is centered.
Mm. I think it's a very good point because I don't know, like I was very fixated on these things, like, oh my god, I it's really annoying me, I really need to move. And I think it's just learning that in nature everything is constantly changing, so it's always circle. So if you have a pain, it will go away. Well, hopefully it will go away, not like some long-term pain, but or if you have something that you really enjoy, unfortunately that's not going to last forever as well. So everything is continuously moving and circling around. So learning that for me helped to be okay with the discomfort in my body in the present moment, because sometimes I know I'm not seriously injured, so this pain I'm feeling now, it should pass, the same as the itch should pass. And then I can focus on more on other things rather than what's happening in my physical body and the discomforts.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good almost like stepping stone in to practice. And as you said, practicing meditation after yoga is the best way, because your if you have anxious energy or like lots of energy, you can burn it kind of throughout class. So you can work through it on your physical body. And it's so much easier to settle when you actually move your body. And also probably you're more open and more strong to be able to stay there.
Exactly. Yeah.
And your mind is prepared as well. So I think it's a very good way of introducing meditation to people's life is after practice. And that's how I was introduced to it as well on my training, teacher training, that we must sit in meditation. And it was pain, but you just get through it. And I think it's something that we should do, because otherwise it's so easy to live through life without being conscious or being aware of our thoughts and what's happening, and we just get past everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And just coming back to practicing it,
Mm,
frequently so you can get past the physical body distractions that come up in the beginning and be able to actually sit with your mind for moments. And it does happen for moments. And the way that I was taught is to look for the moments between your thoughts where there's pure stillness.
yeah.
And that is the space that you're looking to connect to, because regardless of how busy your mind is, there's always like a microsecond at least of some stillness between each thought and between each distraction.
Mm,
And that was really key for me to start to understand what I was looking for meditation, because it's such a foreign concept. Like when you're sitting and trying to be still, you don't even know what you're looking for,
mm,
right? Because your mind is so busy and that's all that you've known and understood your whole life. So how could you feel anything different? You
mm,
think your sense of reality is quite um, developed into adulthood, and the planes of, I guess, mental existence that you can get to. But then there is something different. And it is interesting to learn as an adult. They're like, oh, there is something different that I can feel in my mind. So once you get a grasp on what that might feel like, then you can kind of point your attention there and have a direction to move towards. So that would, for me, it was busy, 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 busy mind, but take a breath. And I teach this in my yin classes a lot because I work with a lot of people with quite busy minds, is to take one breath and you're fully absorbed in that breath and you feel it. You're there with your body, you're there with your mind is there. Your mind's not thinking, your mind is there. It feels that breath in your body, and that's your awareness, your expanded awareness of your whole self in that moment. And then after the breath, there's a moment where there's nothing, or that
mm.
in the breath and just a moment afterwards. That's what you're looking for in meditation. And then you're distracted. And then you take another breath and you're present again. So you just learn through just taking a deep breath and
Yes.
feeling those moments of peace and connection. And that's honestly where you start. And then the breathing starts to become more the focal point. And then you can take maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 breaths in a row where you're fully connected. And then you start to really grasp the concept of being present in mind and body and breath. And that's the link into to higher consciousness, into meditation and stillness.
Yes. No, I think that's a very good way to start with, and I think that's why people find yin so hard, because there's not much going on, and that you have to sit with it. So I think it's a very good practice. Although if someone starts right from it with yin, it's quite hard as well. But how would you? So this is how would you start? Is through being conscious of the breath and just that one breath, and then expanding it to more and more breaths to be like be more present. And how do you practice meditation at the moment, or how would you practice?
Well, I've been practicing yoga and meditation for 15 years now, so it's not difficult for me to sit down. It's actually quite easy to sit down and just meditate now.
Mm,
Like I because my teacher, I had a very, very, very good teacher who was so passionate about meditation. He had the Ashtanga background directly with Patabi Joyce, and then created his own type of yoga, Sattva. and the meditation was called Sattva Ananda, and it was really grounded in learning to sit with your body and train your body for when you're sitting down to go straight into meditation. And
Mm.
my teacher Ramin, he would say, and I always held this in the back of my mind, that once your body is trained to sit into meditation, it just comes. And
Mm.
now I'm at that place. But back then when he was explaining this to me, it it took, an hour and a half to get into meditation because I had to practice yoga for 75 minutes or an hour. Quiet the body, open the body, strengthen the body, and then sit and do breathing for 15 minutes. And then maybe within that 15 minutes, I felt like moments of peace. And then through, we did a lot through yoga teach training where we sat for like an hour, and he was quite diligent with us. Like we had to every day, and like my original yoga teach training, we did lots of meditation too.
Mm.
And that it kind of breaks you into it, I guess.
Yeah.
But you're training your body first of all to know that when you sit down, you are going straight into this place where you're looking from the outside and instead starting to bring your gaze inwards, right? So you're
Yeah.
you're training yourself. So when I sit in meditation, I sit tall, I close my eyes, I put my hands on my legs, palms facing up, shoulders relaxed, facial expression relaxed, taking a breath, training through the breath to find stillness in the mind. But now I can just sit there because I've done that training of the body. So I'm prepared for meditation almost instantly
Mm.
and can go there. So that's how I practice now, and that can feel like such a foreign concept to most people. But then again, like I just said, I've been doing this for 15 years at this point in time in my life. So it's not challenging and for me anymore, thankfully. So the good news is if you practice, you can make it so it's not challenging anymore, but it does take practice.
Yeah.
And I do, like you said, do it in my day-to-day life where I'm quite conscious of my actions and, meditate while I always use this like cutting vegetables, you know. I'm
Yeah.
fully present in the action of cutting the vegetables. I'm not really thinking about something else because I don't want to cut my finger, first of all. And then you're developing this like one pointed concentration through your yoga practice that naturally extends into your day-to-day actions.
Yeah.
So I'm washing my hands, I'm having a shower, I'm washing my hair. Like I'm really connected to those moments. And that's my meditation. And then I also meditate after my yoga practice. So in Ashtanga, we do a yoga mudra, and then you sit there and breathe in lotus pose. And I do a meditation there. Um, I like to meditate when my students are in Shavasana. I find it
Mm.
quite easy to sit there and meditate and really enjoy the stillness because they've worked energetically and physically. I've led them through a class. The energy in the room is quite um, grounded. And then when they're all laying in Shavasana resting, I can just sit there and meditate. And then I um, feel like I drop into it quite easily.
Yeah. No, makes sense.
And then I'm trying to do little meditations in the morning, but I don't always.
It's, I guess, how you have time and where your life is at the moment is always an
Yeah,
affected.
yeah, exactly. Just having
Yeah.
moments to myself and sitting out in the sunshine if I can, um, being quiet in the morning, paying attention to my breath. But it's a time thing. So it's like doing that and then doing it after my yoga practice and then doing it after teaching class is enough for me.
But it's plenty, I think. I think also that's why what's important about meditation as well, it can change throughout your life of how you approach it or how much time you spend on it or how much work you put into it. Because like my relationship with meditation changed a lot. As you say, like before teacher training, you're like not really exposed to meditation, and it's just you kind of forced to do it. You feel like you're forced to do it, but then it becomes like, okay, actually this is good, but it's very hard to sit straight in the beginning. So in the beginning for me, it was very hard to sit still because my mind was going crazy. And for me, actually what helped me doing more meditation is when I started teaching, because I'm such a hyperactive person. As soon as I got to the classroom, I had a few moments to myself to go around and to feel the space, because otherwise my mind would have raced off. So I always used to do some short meditation just before my class started, and sometimes I didn't even sit if people were walking in, but I just made sure I have some quiet time for myself and for my thoughts. And I've been teaching meditation, a very, very short meditation at the beginning of the class, and if I have time in the end as well. But as you said, 45 minutes, 60 minutes is not going to give you time. So I always start my classes with a bit of grounding, of just being present and just being okay if your mind is busy or wherever you are at the moment. And then I did that on all my classes. So if you teach 25 classes a week, then you are doing lots of short snippets, which is already a good start. For me, that's how I started to expand it. I use those time to ground myself and check in with myself, and then bring my meditation a little bit deeper than working at home after my practice. So very similar to you as well, that if I have the time, I always meditate after my practice, because that's the easiest time. Your body is settled. But for example, after that, after my training, I went to a Vipassana meditation retreat. I always find it funny they call it retreat when it's like, doesn't feel like a retreat because it's so intense. You're sitting with your thoughts for 10 days. I was like, this is not a retreat. This is quite hard. It's like for 10 days you do 10 hours of meditation and you're not talking to anyone. You literally just sit with your thoughts, sit with your meditation, and that's literally broke me. But also because I was not prepared. So I went in. I'm kind of a person that jumps head first into everything, and that was with the Vipassana, and I'm really proud I stayed and I made it through. But it was very hard to sit with myself and my thoughts for so long. And it was interesting how we were meditating, and after a while I got physical pains. Like I couldn't get out of bed one morning. I was in such a physical pain. I was like, what the hell, what's happened? I was like, oh, probably all the sitting. And it's just how my body was fighting the way I have to sit with myself all the time. I'm really an extrovert person, so I always like to make my own reality with listening to other people's opinions and views, and then make my own. I'm really like to move in the world like that. And there I was by myself, with my thoughts, and it was quite scary. So Vipassana is a good way of practicing, because it's starting with you paying attention to the between your eyebrows to the corners of your lips, and you're focusing on that triangle for I think 2 days. I don't remember, it's been 5, 6, 7 years ago. So you're focusing for a day just that circle, triangle, sorry. So you're focusing on if you feel any tingling, maybe you feel the air cold or warm. And it sounds boring, but it really teaches you to be diligent and teaches you to be like, okay, persistent. I just have to focus on that, because your mind will be like, oh, hello, what did you do yesterday? No, come back to that triangle. And then as you're there for more days, you expand that triangle for bigger and bigger space to observe. And the end of the day, the Vipassana, you constantly scanning through the physical body for sensations. And for me, that works, because if I focus on one point, so I'm more likely to get distracted. But if my mind can focus on a bigger surface, moving back and forth, and then sometimes I notice like, oh, I'm moving too fast because I just want to get it done. Then I'm like, okay, you need to slow down. So for my active mind, that worked very well, to slowly scan through the body. And then later on with my own practice, I could then focus on one steady point, and it's usually my breath. I like my breath to be my meditating point and my focus point. You focus on your somewhere in the distance, no, when you're meditating.
Yeah. Yeah, just different techniques.
Exactly.
Yours is interesting. I've never tried it. That's what I was going to talk about, like the actual technique that people can do, because I've never tried Vipassana or anything. So well done for that. It's always like been daunting to me. But I think with meditation, it's just like you need to pick a way that works for you and then just do it.
Yeah.
Not like same with yoga. I've talked about this before. Like you're not going to get anywhere if you do a million types of meditation and yoga, and you're kind of just at the beginning of a bunch of different paths, and you're never going to go down anywhere down a path, right? You need to pick what works for you or what you feel works for you the best and commit to it. So you're going deeper down that path.
Yeah.
Um, so I've never tried like a bunch of different types of meditation because I was introduced to what worked for me right from the beginning. Even though it was uncomfortable, it worked for me because it was simple.
Yes.
Like the triangle thing that you said, like I never I never resonated with, imagining you're sitting at a waterfall and listening to the waterfall. Like that visualization, it just it didn't work. It didn't work for me.
Yeah.
And I, once you're like overcoming the physical discomfort of sitting there and you are breathing and you're thinking like how much longer is this breathing practice? Like I want to sit, I want to leave, I'm uncomfortable. And then at the end of breathing, so we did yoga, we sat, we did some breathing exercises, and then we moved into quiet meditation. They did a few moments of leading into meditation, and then it was silence. And I needed that silence because as soon as the teacher like spoke, the words felt like so, how do you say it? Like sharp, like they kind of surprised me out of the meditation when I was trying like so earnestly to stay focused. I'd be like, oh no, I'm out. But that's the thing is like noticing those things that distract you and not allow them to have a big impact on the steadiness and equanimity of the mind. Like when you're throwing stones in a clear lake and it has a ripple effect, that's what I visualize happens to the mind when you have a distraction is your mind is still and then you have this ripple effect, but like how strong is the ripple and how focused on the ripple are you, or do you notice that the ripple occurs but you're still?
I love those kind of when you can um not assimilate, but when you can say like, oh, it is like something you said, the ripple effect. Because I use the same analogy, but I usually say that it's almost like looking at yourself in the surface of the lake, and when you have a thought or movement that is the stone drops into the water and then the ripple effect, and you can't see yourself as clear anymore. You just see like distorted image. So for me, that is the same analogy, but I connected that, oh, I can't see myself clearly anymore because there's all this distraction and chatter that makes me not see myself as much. So I think it's interesting we have the same analogy, but like
Yeah.
little approach.
Well, I think it comes up commonly because it's a good analogy. I've heard other teachers say it too, and it's like, well, how big of an effect does that ripple have on your mind? Or also like this is another way is if you think about, I don't know if you've seen like quantum physics images where the energy in the universe is like pulled and tugged in different directions and it's all one big mesh. I like to
Yeah.
visualize that as the mind too, because the mind is linked to consciousness and consciousness is part of the universe, or it is consciousness. We are consciousness. So if you visualize your mind being tugged out like a string, like your mind is a mesh or something, and it's being pulled out over here, it's like, well, how loud is that tug going to be, or can you resist the urge where you're bringing it back into equanimity of mind and stillness? And then there's another
Mm.
tug over here, and you're trying to be aware. Okay, well, those tugs are happening. Yes, those are thoughts, those are distractions. Like it could be a sound outside, it could be an itch, it could be heat, it could be hunger, it could be a thought that happened yesterday. Oh, I have to send an email, or random things like that person bothered me, blah blah blah. But how do you bring your mind back to stillness? And I was taught to look the through closed eyes to the back of the forehead at one point. And this was so, so powerful for me learning. And so I do teach it is to stare at one spot in the back of your forehead, but feel like your gaze is out into the distance. So your eyes aren't clenched. And once you're gazing out into the distance, your eyes are relaxed, but with your eyes closed in the light spot in the back of your forehead, which is referred to as the third eye. It's the light that you see in that space. You pick a pinpoint spot and you try and stare at it for 1 minute.
Mm.
And if you're pulled away from that spot, you acknowledge what's pulling you away and then come back to the spot and repeat and repeat and repeat. And try not to place judgment on how many times you're distracted. And over time, looking at that spot becomes easier and you're more resistant to the distractions pulling you away. And you can gaze at that spot and it becomes transfixing in a way that you're kind of tripping out on the spot and you see the colors and the patterns and you're absorbed into that.
Mm.
And it's really interesting because you're like your eyes are closed, you're looking at the back of your forehead and you're like, what am I looking at? And
Yeah. And
it's become so interesting. At first, you don't want to close your eyes because it's uncomfortable to close your eyes um, and sit in stillness because it's so foreign. But you try to make it less foreign and more natural
mm.
and become transfixed on what you see in the back of your eyes.
I think it's an interesting way of doing it, because when we in Shavasana, and sometimes when I guide people into a complete stillness, and then when I meant to like stop searching under the closed eyelids, and then my boyfriend was like, after like, how did you know that I was like looking around? I was like, I didn't know, but I kind of expect some people, like I used to do that, or playing with your tongue in your mouth. It's like she can't see it, so it was like you're just fooling yourself with those kind of little movements. um so I always found that in Shavasana quite funny when people like, yeah, I was looking around, and fixating onto one point will stop you moving around. And I think it's a good way of um, practicing. But going back to, you were mentioning that it never worked for you, those guided meditations when you like imagine you're walking through a forest or a waterfall. And I do find for me that doesn't work either, because I just get distracted and I go off somewhere else and then realize like, oh, I don't know where she is and I need to come back. But there are people who really enjoy that when they're guiding you through an imaginary, like a picturesque scene, and they sit with it. So that's why we say that there's so many different variations of meditation you can practice. And like nowadays, what I find easiest when I need 5 minutes, because having a child, I definitely have less time to sit still and in silence. I was like, my idea would be having my coffee or tea in bed, opening the curtain and just looking out, just looking at the trees blowing, and just having a tranquil moment of being with an open eye, and just have a moment to focus on what's happening in around us. Because as I said, throughout your life, your meditation changes, and through the struggles of motherhood, because it's quite challenging, so new, I had no time for my meditation at all. I didn't have time to look in the mirror that if I'm looking like a normal person or not. So for me, just having little times of like, okay, I'm just going to look out the window and just stare at the nature, it helps so much. And what helps is babies are so interestingly just interested in everything that's surrounding them. So every morning when we woke up, Oscar was just like looking at the room, looking at one picture, talking to that picture for half an hour. So I use that time to be like laying next to him, not being on my phone, be like, oh, finally I can stretch. I just lay down as well, and I was like looking around the room, or was looking and absorbing him, because I'm like his little movements and little how his fingers move. So for me, that was my meditation of being really present with my baby, and I found that very tranquil. And it's like, okay, I'm coming back to my mindfulness meditation, and then now I can actually sit and meditate again. But in the beginning, I had no time, no headspace, and nothing there. But these were the little moments of meditation I had every day. It's just observing the moment and absorbing him, kind of.
Yeah,
But yeah,
that's
it's
interesting. But yeah, it makes sense that you just don't have time to do it. But it's, yeah,
because
just having moments of meditation with your baby. I love it.
the other thing
I
is
mean,
that yeah.
sorry, I was just gonna say, yeah, there's so many ways you can do it. And like once you learn the direction and what you're looking for, you can find ways that are more personal to drop into it because like you've done the hard work of training your body to know and your mind to know what you're looking to feel. And um that is the hardest part is like just committing to moving through stuff to find out what meditation feels like.
And also, if you learned it, it doesn't mean that you're gonna have it forever. That you can't stop working on it, because you're gonna have things in your life that just throws you off again, and then you have to start again or not start again. You have the basics. Your body will remember much quicker, but you
Yeah.
constantly remind yourself and to sit and be with it, because this is life. It's constantly changing and evolving. We're changing, so
Well, I think like yoga is the more so powerful when, you're going through your day-to-day life and everything's kind of fine and it just makes you balanced and joyful. But then it's really put to the test when you go through difficult times in your life and your mind becomes louder and you have stronger emotions to work through.
mm,
Like job loss or breakups or
be
um divorce,
yeah,
losing a loved one, bereavement, um, getting ill, dealing with all these very difficult times in life.
yeah,
That's when your meditation and these practices are so powerful. Like, yeah, they're fine to be happy in day-to-day life, but like what happens when shit hits the fan and life isn't so cheerful and joyful and regular? That's when your mind can be super resistant because you want to just not want to, but like you are consumed in your thoughts and emotions around the the negative things that you're going through life, right? Like, and they're very, very, very loud. They're demanding all of your concentration and attention. And I think about like what I felt like when, my dad passed away, and it's, you don't ever let go of it.
yeah,
You learn to live with it more comfortably and you process it, or I processed it through yoga and meditation, and it still comes up, but it's not as loud and over all consuming
mm,
where um you have breakdowns and can't function.
yeah,
So it makes I notice like when you sit in meditation and these powerful things, or maybe past traumas that come up too, that you've never processed or you've repressed and never talked about, can come up in meditation too, because your body remembers everything. It's stored in the fascia. The fascia is like the memory of your body memory,
yeah,
right? Like, it's interesting because humans can give such precedence to the mind being rational and thinking and that you remember everything that's happened to you, but you don't. Like your mind protects you by forgetting stuff and
yeah.
blocking it out, but your body never forgets. And
It's
because you start with your body and meditation and yoga practices, it can come out when you allow yourself to be quiet, and traumas and memories and beliefs in yourself that you held from childhood and, early years can start to come out and be processed. So you you can start to let go of belief systems you created about yourself that aren't real.
yeah,
When I think about like how impactful your words are on children, and we really have to be mindful because I've processed things in meditation where I've had memories of like being told I was being bad
mm,
in childhood come up, and you believe somewhere deep down that you're like a bad person, and then you sit in meditation, you're like, where does that come from? And it's like some random childhood memory where someone told you you were being bad and you made that your personality. Like in that moment, you're like, I'm a bad person. And I've held on to that for decades and
yeah,
let it go through meditation because like as an adult coming back to that, like where did that identity come from? It came from that that moment in childhood, and as an adult you can rationalize it, be like, that's ridiculous, and then you let it go and you're like, okay, I'm not a bad person, and now I've processed this thought that I've held on since I was 4 years old.
Yeah.
Like stuff like that can be worked through in meditation. It's unbelievable.
Exactly. It's not just shoving everything back to the subconscious or under the carpet, because you will notice things that you might not be happy with, and then you can change it. It's just you need to work through it. And I think that's why it's so powerful, because you can keep the things that you think it's really serving you, and then you can acknowledge the things that's not serving you anymore and let go of them. And then it's not going to be just hanging out in your subconscious for the rest of your life and affecting your personality or affecting how you feel about yourself or about your surrounding or the people around you. So please, people, meditate. It's powerful.
Yeah. Well, Eva, I'm just thinking about things like I've worked on, like I can be quite OCD, and I've worked on those types of things through meditation and letting them go, and just kind of, because you can't sit here and just rationalize it in your head. Like if you're OCD and have to go like put the lights on and off like 3 times to leave the room, or else the house is going to burn down. Like I would literally have those thoughts when I was like younger.
Mm.
And you can't rationalize that, right? Just sitting there. But you can in meditation.
Yeah.
You can go so deep where you're still and you get this sense of your true self, and you can be like somewhere down there. It's not your mind rationalizing it, but it's you rationalizing it. You're like, that doesn't make sense. Like, why do I have to put the lights on and off 3 times?
Mm.
Or the house is not going to burn down if I don't do that. And then somehow it just like leaves from your deep consciousness. Viscerally, you can feel it leaving your body.
Mm.
And then it's not such a deep-rooted belief anymore. And I've done that through like a few things. Like I can't remember if I've said on here, like through meditation and my yoga teacher training, my second 200 hour, with my teacher in Canada, who's really big on meditation, we did these like really deep meditation practices where we were doing some inner work, asking like, who are we? Who are we? Over and over for an entire day, like 2 hours at a time, and then take breaks. And that was really powerful because these deep rooted beliefs that you created start to come out. Like I used to have quite a bad temper and a reactive, like angry personality when I was younger.
Mm.
Like right through to my teens and 20s. And it was only when I did this in meditation that I felt like this anger, literally, it felt like it was like bubbling up from in my body somewhere, bubbling up and like leaving through my head. And all of a sudden in that moment, you feel lighter and you're like, wow, I really hold on to this repressed anger that came from somewhere, and now I just don't have it anymore.
Mm. Yeah.
It's so fascinating what you can work with and how you can change your life with it, and just like work with these deep-rooted belief systems about yourself that you believe are you and your personality, but they don't necessarily have to be. Like
Yeah.
you can find calm, you can find inner peace, you can find like how to love yourself and confidence, and um, just feel more connected to others and more compassionate. All these qualities can be developed through meditation, even if you feel like, well, I'm not naturally a compassionate person. Like I've developed compassion through meditation.
Yes. Because I think with meditation, you can see everything more clear, the clarity of yourself, of
Yeah.
is this what I believe of myself came from me, came from someone else? Did you just pick up from your surrounding? Or where is it coming from? It's all the questions you have to ask yourself to work through these things. And again, as we said, it takes time. And it might come back up. It might, or hopefully you can work through them and let go of them and move on and be a better self, better
version of
better
you.
version, a better version of yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. We're all growing and all developing, and you know, there's never ending like personal self-development work that needs to happen, and a lot of it can be understood and let go of through meditation.
Yes.
And then I think we just didn't touch on the practicing yoga without asana. This is it.
But this is it. I think that the whole how, like, as we were saying, like me, you chopping the vegetables and being present with that moment, or me just looking at my child and just being observant of what's happening in the moment. I think taking your practice off your mat is not just one thing of like, oh, I'm not doing the yoga postures in the middle of the living room. It's more of like being more conscious of your reality, conscious of your thoughts, conscious of your how you be in the world, how you act and react, if you actually react, or do you need to act and react on everything that's happening to you. It's just being more observant. I mean, for me, that's how I take off my how I practice yoga without actually practicing asana, is being more a more conscious person.
Yeah. And like this, you can do this like if you can't practice asana for physical reasons, you can always start with breathing and meditation and, japa mala, where you're using the mala beads and like running them through
Yeah.
your hand if you need a physical action, moving your fingers, and you're able to do that.
Mm.
But um, over time through yoga, eventually you don't really rely on your physical practice as much. And I remember personally, and I like how crazy of an idea that was, where it's like, what do you mean I'm not going to have to do yoga or need it as much to get to that place? It's like, no, well, you don't. Like the the profound feeling from yoga, physical practice and breathing that I experienced in class, like it's changed a lot. Like I don't really need it to get to that place because I'm already like way past there. So it is important to allow students to understand that like your practice is going to evolve and change over time if you're committed to it, where you don't rely on the physical practice as much, and you have trained your body to be quiet, to be more aware of the signals from inside and outside and how you feel, and you don't really need the practices as much, and you would look more towards the breathing and meditation because that's where the magic really lies, to go to those deeper levels of understanding who you are.
Yeah. And you can still enjoy your handstands and all the things that you
Yeah.
really love. We don't say that you can't, but that's how what my teacher said it as well. That at the moment, people in the beginning you really enjoyed like, oh, I can do a handstand, I can do a crawl, and you are amazed by all these physical things. But as you evolve with your practice, you're gonna be actually enjoying more to sit and meditate. And after I think 9 years after my teacher training, I'm like, oh, I can understand it. In the beginning, I was like, oh, okay, I'm sure, and now I'm like, oh yeah, actually, this is much more enjoyable. I find it much more enjoyable now.
Yeah. Yeah, it flips completely. Because
Yeah,
before I'm like, I just want to do the practice. I'm here to learn how to do a crow and a headstand. And I don't want to do any of this breathing and meditation nonsense. And now it's totally flipped where like, yeah, I still do my practice. I'm still dedicated to it, but I'm looking forward towards the quiet breathing and meditation at at the end of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, it's good. But yeah, so I think that's about it. I mean, we could talk forever, but then no one would listen enough to us talking about this before.
So
So thank
I guess like to sum it up is like you need to figure out what works for you in meditation. I mean, I think we both have meditation videos on YouTube and our websites, and breathing meditation if you want to learn with us. Just have a look. I have links on YouTube and my blog,
Mm.
and tutorials on my website. And do you as well, Melinda?
I have it in my members area, and I need to expand on putting more things on my website accessible for the whole lot. But
Yeah.
I don't, very like not really. But we did also a a free challenge where we did physical practice, we did meditation, we did reflection, we did breath work, which is already like a 7-day little introduction on all these things, so people can see that as well.
Yeah.
But we'll try to put some links to the show notes if someone's interested on practicing.
Yeah, we can teach you guided videos. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think that's the good place to round it up. And thank you for listening. And then if there's any requests, questions, we are here to answer if we can. If we have the knowledge about it, we will try to do our best.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.